Hard lockdown, crime levels dipped, but the same could not be said about gender-based violence. During this period, conventional and social media were filled with anecdotes of women and children trapped with their abusers under lockdown conditions. As we reflect on the first anniversary of South Africa's lockdown, we reflect on the impact of the lockdown on gender-based violence and the fight against it. We are now joined by Mbuyiselo Botha, who is a commissioner for the Commission for Gender Equality. Mbuyiselo, good morning and welcome to the show. This is a conversation that we're constantly having when it comes to GBV, and whether it's GBV under COVID-19 and even GBV before COVID-19, but it still remains prevalent.
Yes, Adrian, good morning, and thank you for hosting us, inviting us. You are right, Adrian and Jen. Unfortunately, is that what COVID has done, Adrian, and your viewers, is that it has put into sharp focus what has always been the case in our country. We have known, and as a Commission for Gender Equality in the 9 provinces, I mean, we know almost every day women who report to our offices or the partners we work with. So the difference has been that it has highlighted or heightened it, but we know that this has always been, to quote the president of the country, there's been a second pandemic in our country. So the difficulty is that we have not moved fast, or we have not done much as a country to ensure that GBV is in fact halted in our country.
What would you say are those hurdles?
The major hurdle, Adrian, is that we don't have men at the center, in that women don't abuse themselves, don't rape themselves. Until, Adrian, you and I as men are at the center of GBV, we will not be able to stop it. Because, look, we're talking to, it is women who, in fact, are in the forefront, when in fact, it should be you and I and all men in this country for 365 days, 24/7. So for as long as we have not, as a country, put resources to make sure that working with men in this country is top priority, we will continue, unfortunately, because, as I said earlier, women don't rape themselves, don't abuse themselves. And until there is a conscious, deliberate, focused effort, Adrian, to work with men and boys in this country, we will talk until cows come home, until we're blue in the face.
And here's another conversation that I think that we're not having, and probably should start having, because you have a Stats SA that comes out that gives us the unemployment rate, that gives us the retrenchment numbers. And we live in a society that tells you that men are the head of the household and therefore should be providers. And when they are losing their jobs, the mental impact that has on the men, and how that can then de-escalate and lead to a situation where the male, who is expected to be the provider in that household, becomes violent.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, it is our own socialization. Because you have been told, Adrian, you have been told that you are the provider, you are the protector. Now you are retrenched, COVID-19. Now suddenly, Paul's changes. She brings in the money, she pays school fees, she pays all the important things, the cars, the bond, all of them. Suddenly, there is this insecurity, that you feel insecure, when in fact she has done nothing. It is you and I as men, because we are raised to believe that, look, you are responsible. Jy is verantwoordelijk vir die huis. Suddenly, things changes. Now, what do, Adrian? You want to reappropriate your power. And how best do you do it? You do it by ensuring that I am the man of the house. I have power, and I will violate you. The sad part is that you would go nowhere. It's lockdown. Shelters are closed. If they're open, those that are open. And then if you go back to our report, the CGE's shelter report, which was very incisive in highlighting the problems in the sector that you find within the shelter movement, who are doing much work with limited or no resources at all. But the point I'm making is that you then want to go back and prove to her who, in fact, is responsible in this house, who is the man of the house. And the best thing you do is that which you know best. You have been raised to know that, look, you must always affirm your power by being violent. So with COVID, it then increases. Can you imagine, Adrian, you are, for 24 hours, you are locked with your abuser. You got nowhere to go. And I mean, there are instances where policemen and women would also not be sufficiently or adequately responsive.
Yeah. And that speaks to the issue around toxic masculinities. But we saw earlier on this year the president also launching the private sector-led Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Response Fund, and the millions has been raised so far. How do you think this money should be used to respond to some of the issues that you've just highlighted?
Well, I think one of the major, I mean, the focus should be, I mean, NGOs who are doing sterling work under difficult circumstances. So, Adrian, if this money has to be used for the people intended for, we have to make sure that that woman in Vembe, we have to make sure that that woman in Limpopo, that woman in the Northwest, in the 9 provinces, has to make sure that she is able to see the value of this partnership. It will not be enough when, Adrian and your viewers, that we talk about this money, but it's not reaching their intended beneficiaries. And I mean, NGOs are doing work that ordinarily should be done by government. So the best way to ensure that this money reaches the people it's intended to, it is in fact, Adrian, where you make sure that you capacitate NGOs. You make sure that they in fact have these resources. I mean, as we speak, we know that the majority of NGOs in the GBV sector have been closing down. And it's no excuse in a country that we know that it is sufficiently resourced. We know that we have money. The difficulty or the problem has been the corruption that all of us must and should and can be up against. And unless you address these, you may find that even this money may not find its way to its intended beneficiaries. So to answer your question in simple ways, is that when, Adrian, make sure that you give it to people who in fact are doing work that government should do and for some reason is not able to do.
What about the shelters themselves and also capacitating these shelters and safe havens? Because we speak about being under lockdown, but then you find a situation where, as we said in the intro as well, that the victim is stuck with their abuser.
Well, shelters, as I said earlier, I mean, if you, I mean, your viewers, if they go to our website, www.cge.org.za, and then look at our reports, especially the shelter report, you'd actually understand the need for social development and other partners to come on board. If we don't do this, it is women who are at the coalface of violence. And if shelters are not working properly, adequately, they will not be able to give or render services that they're supposed to do. And as I said earlier, look, Adrian, these shelters, government should and must and can make them a priority. I mean, look, you have the VEPs, the Victim Empower Centers in our country. I mean, some you'd find them, I mean, in police stations, in hospitals. The question is, are they adequately resourced? Do you have in those VEP centers, do you have men and women who are trained, skilled in dealing with GBV survivors? Do you have, I mean, do you have people who, I mean, who in fact know what it means to be raped? People who know what it means to be gay in South Africa, to be lesbian in South Africa, to be intersex. So unless and until you make sure that these VEPs That means you ask the Minister of Police to come on board. You ask the Minister of Social Development to come on board. But more importantly, you ask the Minister of Finance and say, Minister Mboweni, come on board. Because the violence against women, it causes this economy. It causes this economy. But again, it's not just that you establish the commission and not sufficiently resource it. You don't only have these campaigns because they're nice to have. You have these campaigns because, Adrian, GBV has a direct economic impact to this country where women are not able to go to work, and it invariably impacts on the economy. I mean, the hospital services. I mean, you get stressed. So we must always understand that there are interlinks, interwoven, between GBV and the economy, that you don't just separate GBV as something nice to have. But you understand that GBV has a lot to do with how this economy survives.
Just quickly then, later on this morning, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services will be launching the On Point, the Point Family Court, which is an integrated approach to dealing with issues such as domestic violence, maintenance, children's court, and protection from harassment. What do you make of this approach that is coming from the judiciary side, at least, of course, being facilitated by the state?
It must be welcomed. I can't emphasize more. It must be welcomed. Where you make justice accessible, Adrian, where you make sure that justice happens, to the poorest of the poor. Our wish as the Commission is that these courts or these interventions must find their presence in those remote areas, that a woman who is in the remotest area, she is able to know that there's justice that I can access without it costing her a cent.
Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate your time. That is Mbuyiselo Botha there speaking on the issue relating to gender-based violence, especially during this period of COVID-19. We're going to go to a quick ad break. When we come back, the agenda continues.